Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chee-Tash. My name is Chris, and we are going to continue with The Alchemist. Today, we're going to be discussing pages 130 through 150, and we are getting very close to the end of the book. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's only 170 pages left, so the next episode, this is our second to last episode. Next episode is going to be the last one, and things are starting to get interesting as we are going to go through here momentarily. Things are starting to come together. We've got Santiago. He's been in the desert. He's now at an oasis. He has met the love of his life. He's met the alchemist. There's been a small skirmish at the oasis. They're going to travel. The alchemist seemingly is going to take him across the desert. There's a cobra that was involved last time. I mean, things are getting crazy. And things are getting close to resolving. Seemingly, he's getting closer and closer to the pyramids. So what's going to happen? Well, it's going to be very interesting. Let's just get right into it, everybody. Where we left off, page 131 here. I'm going to open up my book to page 131. If you guys remember where we left off, the alchemist and Santiago were talking about the emerald tablet. And do you remember we discussed the emerald tablet earlier on? The Englishman had discussed it with Santiago. Santiago was a little disappointed like the first time he saw the emerald tablet because it was just a bunch of symbols. It was coded. He wanted to know exactly what it was saying, but he didn't really know. So now the alchemist brings it up again here, and he explains that the emerald tablet's a direct passage to the soul of the world. And there's two different worlds here. The world we live in, and then kind of like heaven. So there's heaven and earth. I think that was a movie, a Oliver Stone movie, I believe it was. But the world we live in, the alchemist explains, is only an image of paradise. And God created the world like this so that through objects we can understand his teachings. So think about the emerald tablet in that it doesn't come out right away and just say what it intends to say. It's coded. You got to decipher it. You got to put in a little work to get that thing out of it. And this kind of reminds me of something that I always tell like my friends all the time, that Jesus had his disciples that he spoke very clearly to. But then he said when he talked to the regular folk, he spoke in parables. And I've heard Dr. Chuck Missler talk about it, bring this point up as well, that he spoke to the common folk in parables. He who has ears, let him hear. So he was trying to keep it almost like a secret in a way, because not everybody's going to get the message. You're only going to get the message if you really, really if you really seek the message, right? It's not going to be intended for everybody, or maybe it's intended for everybody, but not everybody is worthy of it, so to speak. And I think that's what the alchemist is kind of trying to say here. God creates these objects. He's not going to come out and tell you something right away, or he's not going to reveal something so easily. You kind of have to work at it. Santiago asked the alchemist if he should understand the tablet. And the alchemist says something interesting. He tells him that, you know what, you're in the desert right now. If you were back in your hometown, in a lab, you had access to materials, then yeah, you should probably study the tablet. Like if you're the Englishman, you're going to school, you've got a lot of books, you're looking through them, you're studying, then yes, you probably should understand a tablet. But right now, you're immersed in the desert. You're on a journey to find your personal legend. Focus on that. It is kind of basically what he tells them. Just focus on the here and now. Remember, and this was something the caravan driver told him too. Just focus on what's in front of you. When it's time to eat, you're going to eat. Don't worry about it if it's at any other time of the day. And the alchemist tells Santiago, hey, contemplate just a simple grain of sand. There's one grain of sand out of the billions of grains of sand in this desert that's giant. I remember we talked about this like a couple episodes ago about how there was a certain silence when you looked out at the desert just because of the vastness of it, made you feel very small. Well, that desert is just made up of these little tiny small grains of sand. So it's vast, yes, but if you get down to it, it's just little building blocks. Just like you're made up of little building blocks, atoms, cells, what have you. Don't lose sight of the fact that you're in the desert now and you got to traverse this desert. Let's not worry about the emerald tablet. But Santiago is worried about something else, more so that he misses the things that he used to have. And maybe he's starting to miss his sheep back home, although he's probably gotten used to things in this new land in Africa. But he misses Fatima, is what it actually, Paulo writes here, that Paulo's actually getting at the fact that he misses Fatima. He really loves her. And the alchemist tells him, hey, listen to your heart. It knows all things because it came from the soul of the world and it will one day return there. And so they kind of have this conversation talking about Santiago's heart. Santiago asks the alchemist, well, why do I have to listen to my heart? Alchemist replies, well, wherever your heart is, that's where you're going to find your treasure. Your heart is the compass that points you in the direction of your treasure. And I've read, listened to some people describe your heart as almost kind of like a second brain in a way, because your heart has electrical charges and signals in it that operate independently of your brain. Like your brain doesn't have to tell your heart to beat. It just does. And your heart has certain, it has like almost like a nervous system of your own. Like if you do feel pain, sometimes your heart can emanates that pain from those electrical signals. I'll be honest with you, I'm not very well read on this topic, but the very little I've listened to, that there's people who kind of think that your heart kind of has this capability of almost acting like a second brain. I'm gonna have to do some more research on that. Maybe I'm getting a little out of my element here, but follow your heart is the message of what this alchemist is saying. You got to follow your heart. Santiago kind of pushes back a little bit. He says, but my heart is agitated. It has dreams. It gets emotional. It becomes passionate. It keeps me from sleeping. It's making me think of Fatima back home. And the alchemist just says, well, that's good. Your heart, that means your heart is alive. Keep listening. Santiago further explains to the alchemist, hey, I think my heart is kind of traitorous. It doesn't want me to go on. And the alchemist says to him, well, that kind of makes sense. Keep listening. And it's not traitorous. That's a kind of an unfair label that you're putting on your heart there. It's not that they feel that, it's not that your heart is traitorous. It's that you feel you are undeserving of your dreams, so you don't want to continue. And you're fearing a failure on your way, on your pursuit of your personal legend. And he says here, the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. This kind of reminds me of, remember the last book we read, Man's Search for Meaning? How he said you have to be worthy of your sufferings when he was in the camp, when Victor was in the camp. Similar thing to what the alchemist is saying here. You feel like you're undeserving of your dreams, so you don't even want to bother going after it. But the alchemist is constantly trying to put out these little fires that are amongst him right now with Santiago. He's trying to calm his fears down. He says, hey, keep listening. Keep listening to your heart. It's not going to lead you astray. Keep listening to your heart, and you know you're going in the right direction. Being in search of your dream is like being in pursuit of God, he mentions here. So let's continue on. Page 136. A heart suffers when you are not in pursuit of your dream. That seems like, based on just everything that we just talked about, that kind of makes sense. You know, the soon as you stop pursuing your goals, your heart is going to keep trying to communicate to you like, hey, get back on this path. But after a while, if you don't follow the heart's advice on what it's communicating to you, well, then it's going to get discouraged a little bit. And all of a sudden, the communications that your heart has with you are going to dwindle, and they're going to subside over a while. The heart's probably going to say, hey, why keep doing this? Why keep communicating with this human being that I'm a part of? It's not even listening to me. Why bother? So it stops wasting the energy for it. That's what makes this heart suffer. And Santiago takes this, no pun intended, but he takes this to heart. And he says, hey, listen up, heart. Never stop speaking to me. Keep pressing me on this. I have a goal that I need to realize. So you need to keep pushing me in that direction. But as I've said so many times while we've been discussing The Alchemist, nobody ever said it'd be easy. Nobody ever said it'd be easy. And do you guys remember us talking about beginner's luck? How whenever you start something, you have some beginner's luck. And you build up a little bit of momentum off that beginner's luck. He's talked about this with the crystal merchant and how, hey, we got to hurry up and start selling this stuff. Got to start selling this tea. Because I just got here. Luck's going to be on our side. Things are going to just work out. Because all the universe conspires to help you realize something, realize your personal legend. And it gives you that nice little rocket boost at the beginning. Now, what I have here, though, this is something that's discussed between the Alchemist and Santiago, is that at the end is when it's most difficult. That's when the soul of the world takes over and tests everything that got you to the point to where you are right now. 100 meters from the finish line. This is going to be the toughest part. And they give a little analogies here. One dies of thirst just when the palm trees have appeared, or it's always darkest before the dawn. And I believe the reason for this is that, again, you have to be worthy of your personal legend. It's not going to come easy. And where would it suck the most to have it not be easy is right at the end when you see the finish line and you're tired, you have no energy left, you're frustrated, and you just can't wait to be done. Well, guess what? Here's another obstacle right at the end, just to piss you off a little bit more. Right? What's like the cliche thing in the military? They put that big wall up that you have to climb over. Right? Don't they put it like right at the end? After you finish running, doing the push-ups, crawling through the mud, now you got to traverse this big-ass wall right at the end. It's to test you. So you could say that Santiago's about to get this test, if he's not already gotten this test. As a allusion to something that's going to happen in just a few pages here, 3 armed tribesmen appear. And this is on page 137. And they ask them what they're doing in the desert. Just these 2 guys, Santiago and the Alchemist. So they search them. Santiago is carrying money. Alchemist has a couple interesting things. He's got a small crystal flask with liquid. And he's got a yellow glass egg. And they kind of ask him, the tribesman asks the Alchemist, well, what are these things? And the Alchemist says that the liquid is the elixir of life, and the glass egg thing is the Philosopher's Stone, which, if you guys remember, together makes up the masterwork. And he explains to the tribesmen, well, the elixir of life will make a person never get sick. If somebody drinks this, they'll never get sick. And the stone is going to turn any metal into gold. And you remember the Englishmen had shared this information with Santiago before, back, I think, when they were traversing the desert. And the people laugh at them, or the tribesmen, rather. They start laughing at them. And they send them on their merry way. They just let them go. They didn't believe him. And this was a lesson that the Alchemist was trying to teach Santiago, is that when you possess great treasures and try to tell others, seldom are you believed. This is something that I just talked about with a friend of mine, how lately, with everything going on in the world right now, I try not to convince anybody of anything. And this could be as far as like debates go, if we're on like different sides of like an issue. I don't try to convince anybody, and I don't debate anybody. Why waste my energy when it's really not going to do any good? Building on this, if something works for me, there's a couple things that I do in my life that have worked really well for me, and I have great results from these certain things that I do, routines, you could call them. Yeah, I think that's the best way to describe it. Routines in my life, decisions that I've made in my life. And I would get very excited that it worked out for me, that I would try to explain them to other people and maybe recruit other people to do it to do the same things. What I have found in my experience is that it falls on deaf ears, kind of. And it's not that people laugh at me, although probably some do, and some people think I'm crazy for some of the things I do. But again, I spend a lot less time trying to convince anybody that anything that I do would benefit them. Just like the Alchemist says here, that seldom are you believed when you try to tell others that you possess these great treasures. And I found that to be true in a lot of cases in my life. So I refrain from telling anybody anything. Things have worked for me, and I'm just going to keep doing them, even if people think I'm crazy. But what works for me might not work for you. Now, I hope that you wouldn't think I'm crazy or laugh at me or anything like that, but well, I mean, whatever. So I like this little story, this little, it almost seems like a kind of sidetrack story. It was some very, very little short event with these 3 armed tribesmen. But I like the fact that this is in here because I think this is a great point by the Alchemist. Don't cast pearls among swine. What are they going to do with them? They don't have any use for them. Just don't do it. In my opinion, you can do whatever you want. What's worked for me might not work for you, again. Just to reiterate that point. The heart becomes more silent. So Santiago's heart is said to just wanted to contemplate the desert. This is on page, it must be like 140 now. 140, like 141-ish. So the heart, Santiago's heart starts to become a little more silent here. And the heart is just kind of doing what Santiago has done on his whole trip in the desert. Not his whole trip, but where Santiago just stares out in the vastness of the desert. That's what it's kind of implied here that his heart is starting to do a little bit. Just contemplate the desert. It's looking out at the desert, looking out at its vastness, just like Santiago is. They're one and the same. It's all one body, one human being. And then Santiago's heart reveals to him that it has kept him from danger in the past. Interesting. This whole heart concept seemingly was new to Santiago. He had never really delved deep into this area before he met the Alchemist. Now the Alchemist is kind of sharing with him stuff about his heart and how it's kind of like a compass for your soul so you can find and pursue your personal legend. And here Santiago's heart says, well, I've always kind of been here. I've always helped you out. And here's a couple examples. One, the heart said to Santiago that it hid a rifle from him when he was a very young kid, very, very young when he was back at home with his parents. So he hid the rifle from him so that, nothing fatal would happen. Then there was another instance where the heart saved Santiago from a bunch of thieves that were up ahead. This was back when he was a shepherd, and he got very, very sick so that they couldn't travel forward anymore. They had to take a break, camp up somewhere, and up ahead were thieves that he just missed out on because he camped out and he didn't continue traveling. So Santiago asks the Alchemist, well, will my heart always save me? And the Alchemist says, well, you know what? It's going to do what it can. And that's all you can ask for. It's kind of like Morpheus in the Matrix. I can show you the path, but you're the one who has to actually walk it. Let's continue on. The alchemist tells him, trust your heart, but never forget you are in the desert. No one fails to suffer the consequences of everything under the sun. So you're not immune from everything. You know, shit happens. But as long as you trust your heart, it's going to do everything that it can. Again, the universe conspires to help you, right? Find your personal legend. That doesn't mean it's going to, grab your hand and walk you all the way there. No, maybe in the beginning with the beginner's luck, but then at the ending, it's going to test you. So it's interesting. We talk about this with the heart. Can you trust your heart is going to be there to save you? And right here on page 140, things start to get a little dicey. And the duo pass by an encampment of one of the tribes. This is one of the tribes that seemingly is warring out in the desert. Santiago thinks they're going to be fine. They passed by the three that were that made fun of the alchemist that we were just talking about before. But this time, they are not allowed to continue. They are stopped again. And the alchemist just takes one look at them. He says, I'm not going very far. And the people looked at him. They were silent for a moment, and then they agreed that they could move along. So they were impeded, but not for very long. And the alchemist has another little point to make to Santiago. The eyes show the strength of your soul. It's like, because it says here that the alchemist gave him a look. He looked at him right in their eyes, pierced down to their very bones. He was like looking straight through them. And that's what allowed them to go. This will not help them in every situation, though, as we are going to see. So Santiago, he's been with the alchemist for a little bit, traveling with him. And he asks the alchemist, hey, teach me about alchemy. You haven't really taught me anything here. I mean, how frustrated do you think Santiago is here? He's been with the Englishman, all his books, all his knowledge. He's been with this alchemist, famed alchemist, all his knowledge. And he hasn't really learned a whole lot about alchemy. Yeah, he was shown the Emerald Tablet, probably something pretty rare. Not many people get a chance to look at. And he still doesn't really understand what's going on. And the alchemist explains to him, well, alchemy is about penetrating to the soul of the world. Right? But Santiago says, okay, I already get that. Show me how to turn metal into gold. I want to get rich. Who can blame him? And the alchemist starts to explain to him, others have been interested in this too. This isn't anything new. They want the gold, but they did not care about the other aspects of alchemy. You want the result, you want the goal, but you're not going to bother to really delve deep into the history, traditions of alchemy. And he's saying how all these metals, this is on page, I think, 142. Where was it? Like towards the bottom of page 142, and he's saying how all these substances, all these metals have their own personal legend. Lead, copper, iron. And he says, anyone who interferes with the personal legend of another thing will never discover his own. And he talks about how the desert that they are traveling through right now was once a sea. And they actually pick up, there's like a seashell there. And he picks it up, asks him to put the seashell to his ear. And he hears the sounds of the sea. And Alchemist says that the sea has lived on in this shell because that's its personal legend. And it will never cease doing so until the desert is once again covered by water. So I think what the Alchemist is trying to explain here is worry about yourself. Focus on yourself. Why throw shade at somebody else in their personal legend when maybe you haven't even attained yours? Jordan Peterson has something in his book, 12 Rules for Life, that kind of explains this point. You shouldn't criticize the world unless you have your own house in order. And that kind of relates here to what the Alchemist is saying. Why are you going about being critical of others when your life isn't even in order yet either? You haven't done anything with your personal legend. Don't interfere with somebody else's personal legend. That's theirs to take care of. Worry about you. Worry about yourself. So they continue on. And they come across some more tribesmen. And this time, the death stare of the Alchemist can't help the two. And it actually says, Santiago, the author Paulo Coelho makes a point here. Their eyes spoke of death. They couldn't even see their faces. They were covered. So there's no piercing through these eyes to make them, let you go and they're going to let you continue on your journey. Nope. They take them to a military camp, the Alchemist and Santiago. And at the camp, they're accused of being spies because they've been seen hanging with the other tribes that they are warring with. Right? The other tribesmen that stopped them before this point. And the Alchemist starts saying some interesting things. And I am not sure why he does this, but he has some amazing claims here. They kind of, as the military camp is questioning the duo, they ask him, hey, well, who are you guys? What do you do? Why are you here? And the Alchemist explains that Santiago is an alchemist. He identifies Santiago as the alchemist. And that Santiago's money, remember, Santiago has like a bag of money with him. We discovered this when they were stopped by the other tribesmen. And he says that, oh yeah, this money that Santiago is carrying, it's for you. It's for you guys. And so the tribesmen are like, well, what's an alchemist? What does that do? And the actual alchemist says that, well, you know what an alchemist means? An alchemist means that this whole camp could get destroyed by the force of the wind that Santiago can wield. And he offers the tribesmen a wager if he can't do it. If they can't do it, their lives will be the military camps. And it says here, this is page 145, if he can't do so, we humbly offer you our lives for the honor of your tribe. So all of a sudden, The alchemist throws out just a bunch of things that are not in this group's favor, not in this duo's favor. Santiago is not an alchemist. Why does he say he is? Santiago's got money, but not for the military camp. Why does he offer up this money? And then he puts Santiago on the spot and says, hey, he's going to use the force of wind to destroy this camp. And if not, well, you could kill us. All of this without discussing it with Santiago. And I think maybe there's a method to the madness here, if you will. You know, yes, Santiago's upset, but this is a chance, I think, that they are close to the pyramids. This is one of the final obstacles, and this is put up or shut up time, so to speak. You know, this is the darkness before the dawn. You have all these powers at your disposal, Santiago. Time to put them to use right now. And if you didn't believe before, well, you better start believing now, or else we're going to die. Right? That's kind of what I think is happening here. The alchemist knows something that we don't. He just said all these lies, gave away his money, and he bet he could do something that Santiago's never done before. Now Santiago's pissed, as he has a right to be. He's fearful that he's not going to be able to harness this wind. But the key to it, I think, is his heart. And the alchemist tells him, don't be fearful. If you're fearful, you're not going to be able to talk to your heart. And if you can't talk to your heart's not going to show you the way to accomplish these things and get to your personal legend. And he says to Santiago, the threat of death makes people a lot more aware of their lives. So in other words, when your back's against the wall, that's when you fight the hardest. You know, the great thing about the bottom, there's nowhere to go but up. When your back's against the wall, that's it. There's nowhere else to go. It's just forward from there, forward from the wall. And pressure makes diamonds. People, now not too much pressure, but people can thrive under pressure. You know, it lights a fire under you. You want to get things done. It's uncomfortable. You want to get back to comfort. Santiago is starting to practice this a little bit. He's got to figure out how to harness this wind, and you know, the alchemist tells him a couple things, kind of tries to point him in the right direction with you got to be able to talk to your heart, don't give in to the fears. Alchemy brings spiritual perfection into contact with the material plane. Telling him all this stuff. All right. The challenge is 3 days away. So that was the first day. The second day, he climbs to the top of a cliff, looks out over the desert, and just kind of stares off into space. Just kind of listening to everything that his heart is trying to tell him. And then the third day comes. That's game day. And all eyes are on Santiago. And I think he's back on the cliff while everybody is looking up to him, kind of waiting to see if he's going to end up being able to do this task. And now the desert starts speaking back to him. And Santiago's trying to explain to the desert, hey, you're holding the person that I love. I want to go back and see her. And Santiago has to explain to the desert, because the desert that is talking to him doesn't know what love is, so he kind of has to explain, you know, it's, and this is a typo here, circle of life. Santiago is explaining that love is really kind of like the circle of life, in that, you know, the falcon hunts in the desert, brings it back to his nest to feed his family. And then it all just ends up coming around full circle a little bit. And the desert decides that it's going to help him out. It's going to lend him the sand to use. But the desert can't really help out much more than that. So he's going to have to ask for help from the wind. Then, and this is going to be the end. This is like page 150 here. 149, 150. Then Santiago starts to talk to the wind. And he's got to start asking the wind for some help now. And going back to what love is and how it's the circle of life, this is what Santiago on page 150 explains it like this. But that's why you created the game in the first place, to nourish the falcon. So the falcon hunts in the desert. And the falcon then nourishes man, because the man hunts the falcon. And then eventually, the man will nourish your sands, where the game will once again flourish. And then again, that makes it so that there's more game for the falcon, and then the falcon gets eaten by the man, and then the man nourishes the sand again. That's what love is, the circle of life. In my opinion. And that's the end. That's where we are going to close here. Wow. So it's game time. If he can't make this wind work for him, I mean, seemingly his life's going to end right here in the desert. So close to his personal treasure. But you know what? That is so much better than leaving this world when you're not even in pursuit of your treasure. Because this is something the Alchemist had told Santiago before, that, hey, everybody's going to die someday. The fact that you are dying in pursuit of your personal legend, well, that's better than others who never even tried pursuing their personal legend. Right? So what do you think? Is he going to do it? Is going to be able to harness this wind and destroy this camp? I think the Alchemist has something up his sleeve a little bit to just offer up this service that Santiago can do this without ever having seen him do it before. Something I think is going to work in Santiago's favor here, and we're going to find out about this next time. And for next time, guys, we're just going to finish the book. This goes right up to page 170. That's about like 170, 171. That's basically 20 pages. And let's finish the book for next time, guys. 150 through 170. And we are going to come to the conclusion of The Alchemist. I am very excited. I'm curious to see if Santiago makes it, if he achieves his personal legend, if he gets to the pyramids, or does this journey end here at the military camp? Guys, if you made it this far, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. We'll be back next week. Once again, my name is Chris. This has been Chee-Tash. Till next time, bye everybody.